Hello, my name is Thomasina Rogers, and welcome to Black Girls Grow, where growing is our passion, and our motto is, when Black girls grow, everybody wins. We begin this episode by paying homage to the changing seasons. And we know from Ecclesiastes, to everything there is a season, a time and purpose under heaven. And no place displays the changes in seasons better than our gardens, our yards, and the landscape we inhabit with the wildlife. In the last episode, I showed you how to harvest seeds from the spent flowers of two of my favorite plants in the landscape, the zinnias, this red guy here, and the marigolds. But they are annuals, and you shouldn't count on them coming back in the spring unless on some occasion they do reseed themselves. On the other hand, my fall garden, the collards, cabbage, and kale are really growing, and they are in their season. And in fact, according to the old adage, collards they don't reach their maximum sweet capacity until after a frost has fallen on them. So I'll be bringing you those collards from the garden to the table in an upcoming episode on how to cook them Southern style. I want to spend a few minutes just highlighting some of the plants that you can plant for enjoyment next spring. And this is really the perfect time to plant perennials. Perennials and shrubs and trees. One of my favorite perennials is this coneflower here. Echinacea is its proper name. There are many reasons to love echinacea. They come in so many colors. They're very hardy, and most of all, they are very attractive to the pollinators. So, and since I do keep bees, and I love butterflies, and I love bumblebees, this is the plant. This is the way to go. So you plant it now. It won't look like anything over the winter, but it will re-emerge in the spring in all of its glory. Behind me are a plant that is of interest because it has two lives, and those are pansies. I love pansies. They are just simply beautiful. Their colors are so intense, purple and yellow, and some of the other colors. So the two lives are that they bloom and flourish right now before the frost comes and before it gets too cold. They die back in the very cold weather, but they reemerge in the spring in all of their glory. And they're early birds. So if you're looking for something to have in your garden late, like now, and bring color, and early in the spring. The other thing that I do for spring are bulbs. And so, there are any number of bulbs that you can buy for planting right now. Tulips and daffodils. And you just pick up your bulbs from your local nursery and plant them now before the ground freezes. And they will be very faithful and bloom in the spring. And one thing that I might suggest to you, though, is bulb tone. This is a product that helps the bulbs that you plant now have bigger blooms and root more easily. So with that, I promised you at the last episode that I would take you into my workshop. And that's what I'm going to do. So I invite you to come with me, and there I'll show you how, again, appropriate to the season, I propagate two of my other favorite plants in the landscape, Coleus and Caladiums. See you there. Come on in while I pour myself a cup of tea and continue the conversation about what you can do to prepare your garden and your yard for the winter. Of course, if you have a fall crop in like I do, kale, collards, cabbage, and mustard greens, this is also a time of harvest and of giving thanks for the bounty of the land. In this segment, I will touch on how to propagate some of your favorite plants from the landscape so that you can enjoy them next year. We've already spent some time talking about harvesting seeds from marigolds and zinnias, and so I probably will only very quickly touch on that again. But I will spend some few minutes talking about lifting your tubers and storing them over the winter, answer the question of whether to lift or not, show you how I take cuttings from my favorite flowers and root them and keep them inside over the winter. And then finally, I'll talk a little bit about stealing. Yes, you heard me right, stealing. If you stick around to the end, I will shine some light on the long indulged practice of theft in the garden. Here in this space is where I start most of my vegetables and flowers, especially annuals, from seed. As you look around, you're probably thinking, oh gosh, you need a lot of stuff to get seeds growing inside in the spring. You're only partly right. I incorporate a lot of seed starting material and equipment in my production over the last 25 years, but don't get yourself overwhelmed by all this stuff. You can start small with just a few supplies like I did, and then grow in the direction of your interest. When the time comes to start seeds inside in the spring of 2021, I'll show you my way as well as a simpler, cheaper alternative. Another approach, if you don't want to bother with all this stuff, then you can sow seeds directly into the ground, or the more expensive route, buy plants from your local nursery. As an aside to overwintering your outside plants, there is one other chore, and that is for your houseplants that have spent the summer luxuriating on a porch somewhere. It's definitely time to have them inside, get them inside. My rule of thumb is to clean and debug them by the time the nighttime temperature reaches 45 degrees. As you can see here, this is a Chinese evergreen, and it's been on the front porch the entire summer. And it loved it so much, it grew and flourished to the point that I could take cuttings from it. And you can see the roots here on the cuttings that I've taken from this Chinese evergreen. And so they both will be inside for the winter now, with the added benefit that the cuttings will go in the ground, and that's an extra plant for myself or one that I can share with my friends. When you look around your yard, you probably see a mix of annuals and perennials if your yard is anything like mine. The perennials, by definition, come back every year, so you don't have to do a whole lot to worry about them. Maybe throw some mulch on them if they're a little bit tender. As far as your annuals go, though, you will either let them go at the end of the season. They're kaput when the weather dips below, oftentimes, in the 40s. Or you can take steps to propagate them for the next season. We already talked about marigolds and zinnias and harvesting the seeds. So here you go. These have been brought in, dried a little bit, and there are the seeds ready to be stored for next year. I've already designated some of these seeds for my friend Paula. She admired them when she was visiting, and I said, okay, well then these will go into the envelope with her name on them, and they'll be ready for her to use next year. As far as the The other tender annuals, caladiums, they're my favorite, although they're not annuals in the climate where they originally were bred, but in my neck of the woods, they certainly are. They are annuals unless you dig them up. And what I do is I store them over the winter, store them in vermiculite. Just take them, put them in here, and put them in a cool place for the winter. That's the caladiums. All bulbs are not created equal. Let's just get that straight right now. These tulip bulbs are ready to go in now, and they actually need a cold snap in order for them to bloom in the spring. So these are bulbs that are winter bulbs, whereas the caladiums they're really technically not bulbs, they're tubers, but they don't like the cold. And so you just have to deal with these tubers and bulbs according to what their nature is. Another very popular way to propagate annuals is to take cuttings and to then root them. So right here you can see that I have taken some of my favorite coleus. They come in many different colors, but I've taken them from the garden before the frost has set in to kill them. And I've rooted them, and you see how aggressively they root in water. Some people will root annuals, including coleuses, in water, but first use a rooting powder. Coleuses really don't need rooting powder. And in fact, they might not even need to be rooted in water. But I did that just to show you how well they grow. And then what I do is I take them after they've rooted, and I will plant them in a pot of soil, and they do just fine. But you have to keep them watered over the winter. But it's a way to make sure that you have your coleuses ready to go in the spring. And this is one that has grown from clippings, and this is another in a different color, both grown from clippings. Some of the plants, some of the annuals are a little bit more challenging, and I'm going to show you my failures as well. So here is a New Guinea impatiens, and you can actually root these in water. They do need the rooting powder, but you cut their stems because they're woody. You cut their stems on an angle, dip the stem in the rooting powder, like such, and then put it in water. So I'll let you know as time goes on how successful I am. I'm particular, and this is the first year I've done this with New Guinea impatiens. And the reason that I was tempted to do it is because you can't buy New Guinea impatiens seeds. You can only buy them as plants in the store, or if you're lucky enough to get them to root in your home, then you're ahead of the game. But for all of these plants that I've been able to root either directly in soil or in water, they will remain in my bathroom for the winter, where the humidity is agreeable to them and the heat is also agreeable to them. This is a good time to segue into our final segment on stealing. I promised you at the outset that we talk a little bit about stealing. You know, stealing, petty larceny is when you steal somebody's cutting from their plant in the garden. So let me get my mother, Nana Bama, on the line, because I'm sure she can shed some light on this very nettlesome problem.
Hello.
Good morning, Nana Bama. How are you doing today?
Sweetie, I'm doing fine. Just about to have my morning cup of tea.
Me too. But let me get right to the point of my call, if you don't mind.
Sure, baby. What's on your mind?
Stealing?
Stealing?
Yeah, stealing plants to be specific, as when you pinch a piece of someone else's yard plant without their permission.
And you say that's stealing?
It's not my word, Mama. When I was a child, I overheard some of your church lady friends talking about how they had stolen cuttings from Miss Beulah's verbena, and about how, as a result, Miss Beulah's prize verbena had spread like kudzu throughout the entire community. Nana, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Well, I'm doing a survey about stealing plants. Did you ever steal plants that way?
I never stole Miss Beulah's verbena. I have to run now. I'll be late for church. Talk with you later, baby. Toodaloo.
Ooh, I guess that's the end of that. Okie dokie then. Hey girls, I've got a great idea for you. If you want to start a garden with clippings from other people's garden, but like Nana Bama, you don't want to be accused of stealing, why don't you ask friends, family friends, members of your church or your community if you can visit their garden and take clippings from them to start your own garden. I'm sure they'll accommodate you. I certainly would. But I guess that raises the question of, you've got to have the garden space to plant the clippings, to have a garden. And so I'm going to show you a quick and easy way to start a garden beginning right now. So first, with the help of an adult, gather up a bunch of newspapers and then open them up and make a stack of 15 pages each laid out on the ground, on the space where you want your garden. Could be in the lawn. And then what you do is you're going to cover the entire area, make sure and then anchor down the newspaper with stones or bricks so that the wind doesn't blow it away until your next step, which is to then spread about 3 inches of municipal compost over that newspaper. I live in Prince George's County, and it wouldn't be a problem here because it boasts the largest composting plant facility on the East Coast. But you're gonna cover the paper, the entire space that you want for a garden, with that municipal compost. And then you're going to wait until spring when the paper, the lawn, and the compost have all turned into kind of a rich topsoil. And voila, you have your garden replete with earthworms ready for planting. And for you adults out there, I've got an idea too. It's the idea of a friendship garden in which all the flowers are grown from clippings that you get with permission from friends. And this would save money, but more importantly, the experience of sharing plants would bind you together in a circle of friendship, just like in the old days. I have enjoyed the time we spent together. If you have too, then please hit the like button. And if you haven't already done so, subscribe. And remember our motto: when Black girls grow, everybody wins. Toodaloo. Until next time.